welcome to the Whitman Freedom Team. This is this program and a series of programs that we've put together here, the members of the Whitman Freedom Team who are residents of our town of Whitman, committed to advancing freedom and good practice and neighborliness in our community. We have a very special guest today, and so in order to move us along, I want to introduce Tom Evans, who is the Executive Director of the Whitman Freedom Team. Tom?
Thanks, Michael. Today we're really fortunate to have someone who is a longtime member of the community. Her name is Juanita Brunelle, and Juanita Brunelle lives down on Alden Street, if you know where that is. Juanita, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about yourself, but basically she's devoted her life to education, and she deals with helping other people's make it in life. She's very sympathetic, empathetic, and very, very genuine in her efforts to help others. So without further ado, Juanita Brunelle.
Thank you. I just want to talk a little bit about my educational background. I started my college education at Clark University in Worcester, majoring in French, minoring in Spanish. And when I graduated, I had the good fortune to go to the Bryn Mawr Summer Institute in France, which was sort of a dream come true. I lived with a wonderful French family that I kept in contact for years and years. Was able to stay with them and travel and practice my French and see lots of beautiful things in France. I came back to take an assistantship at URI, University of Rhode Island, to get a master's in French. And as I was completing that, I was very fortunate to be hired at Massasoit Community College as a professor of French and some Spanish. So I was there for a number of years and got interested in teaching English as a second language, partly because the dean of continuing ed asked me to work with the Hispanic community in Brockton to help them get their GED. And with the help of a member of the self-help community, Brian Blazer, we turned it into an English as a second language program. Some of my students did work on their GED as well. And that program became the foundation for the a big ESL, I want to say open house, but that's the name of it, not the name of it, in Brockton that serves adults and learning English. I got interested in developing a credit course at Massasoit, courses for our non-native English speakers that would be credit courses toward graduation. And did that for a number of years, retired some years ago. I was always interested in Roxbury Community College because they are the most diverse community college in our system. And I was invited to, as a consultant, to do some revamping of some of their courses, which I did. I ended up teaching some credit and non-credit courses at Roxbury. I'm still there. I'm endlessly fascinated with the diversity of our student population. Working with people that are as dedicated as I am to getting perhaps a program in linguistics and diversity at Roxbury. So I've had a great journey, and I really am enjoying always learning from my students.
Mm-hmm. How exactly did you get into Roxbury, or how was somebody hear about you, or did you look into it, or what was it? How did you?
It was a combination. I had been a member of several statewide groups, so I knew some people at Roxbury. But at the time of my retirement, both the president of Roxbury and the dean of faculty came from Massasoit. Mm-hmm. The dean of faculty had actually been my supervisor, and she invited me to, as an outside consultant, to evaluate the ESL program at the college. Mm-hmm. So I did that. And then one of her professors was on sabbatical, so I taught his courses. And then I was invited by the Dean of Workforce Development to work with him in a company from Roxbury. I've done that several times. under the auspices of the college, we would go into a company and offer courses to their employees. So I did find interesting work at Roxbury, and as I said, I've really enjoyed working in such a diverse community. I have students from so many parts of the world in my classes.
What motivated you to get involved with the Whitman Freedom Team in terms of helping us out today in particular?
Well, I think that we need to really celebrate diversity in our communities, obviously, as well as in education and our work environment. I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about our immigrant population. It's rather dismaying. I think that we're all enriched if we can really get to know each other and understand each other and see that we can gain from different perspectives. So I feel that in my job, I'm constantly learning from my students, and I always enjoy hearing more about other cultures, other ways of living, other ways of thinking. Food is always interesting, dress is always interesting. So I really think any effort to make us a more diverse, rich community is good for everybody.
Juanita, excuse me, when immigrants come to Whitman, as an example, as they do to many other communities, Brockton and others,
Right.
What are some of the challenges that they face that you see and roadblocks that need to be pushed aside so that they can live a better life among the residents of Whitman?
Yes. Well, first of all, of course, they need to get to be quite fluent in English. So we need to have programs that suit them. We do have a number of programs in Brockton. Massasoit, of course, has programs. So we need to be aware of that need and be there to provide these courses. I also think that a lot of times we find that these people have skills and even higher education, but they are working in very low-paying jobs. Many of them are working, for minimum wage. I think that we don't realize that a lot of them have had pretty good positions in their own countries. I've had doctors in my class, I have accountants, I have people that have been nurses, and we need to help to streamline getting them into positions where they can contribute more and we can benefit more, and they can enjoy more the benefits, because they really are working hard to have a better life, especially for their children.
Juanita, do you when you talk to the immigrants who come to Whitman, do they seem to be satisfied with the community that they're living in and the neighbors that are around them, or are there some problems that need to be addressed?
I can't speak for Whitman particularly, because I'm not working in Whitman, but I believe that the problems that people encounter are fairly universal. I'm happy to see there are more immigrants in Whitman. I think that if there is adequate housing, if there are job opportunities, I think we're lucky to have the commuter rail now, because that makes us more diverse in terms of where we can go and work and go to school and so forth. So I do think that Whitman has a lot of advantages. I would encourage all of us to really welcome them and be more open to hearing about them and who they are, and get to know who they are.
When you're working at Roxbury Community College, are you working primarily with immigrants from a particular? I know they're from all over the world, but is there a particular country that seems to be moving into Massachusetts that you need to work with?
We see, in all the years I've been part of working with these communities, I like to say that we see the immigration trends in our classes. So right now we are seeing a lot of people from Haiti in Roxbury. We have a mosque near Roxbury Community College also, so we have a lot of people from Arabic cultures, Islamic religion. We have a fair amount of people from the Dominican Republic. various African countries. We don't tend to have a lot from Northern Europe because that's not where the immigration is taking place. Interestingly, when I first started in ESL at Massasoit, we had a lot of Vietnamese after, of course, the war calmed down and they needed to get out. So we do sort of match the immigration trends.
You know, one of the other things when you were talking before about languages is so important, one of the things we've had on previous shows, we've had people who are working in the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District, and there's a focus on helping those folks, particularly in the lower grades, to teach them English as a second language. And then the superintendent also mentioned other programs that I wasn't aware of. But probably the biggest thing that affects everybody, I would think, is the new regulations over the last 5 or 10 years, where every student who's going to become a teacher should have and will have English as a second language courses. And a lot of people think, well, that's just how to learn their language. It's not. How to learn their culture. Like, for example, sometimes in some cultures, teachers will say, well, he wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't even look at me.
That's
well,
right.
That's part of their culture.
That's
it's a sign of respect, not to challenge. When I was in Lowell, a large Vietnamese and Laotian population, same thing. So they thought that they didn't care. They did care, but that was their tradition. That was the way they were brought up. And that's important because you make determinations and you make decisions based on how do you think the child or the person is reacting to, when really they're not being disrespectful at all, just the opposite.
Yes.
So I think that's really important.
It is important. It's very important. And some people have said in my profession that language is culture. I'm not sure that I go that far, but certainly we do convey culture through our language. And it's so very true that what is okay in some cultures is not okay in others. So from the beginning, they're not only learning the language, they are learning the cultural aspects of everyday life. And it's very hard to predict why we do things a certain way, but we sort of do. And it's not that our way is better or worse. I think that is one misconception, that people who haven't lived or tried to understand other cultures or lived in other cultures, we kind of think that the American way is the best. And I think in many ways it is, but not everything. There are things we can learn from other cultures, and so we need to teach them about ourselves. But we can also listen to them because they have some pretty good ideas to share with us. I remember, I love hearing the different perspectives. I remember years ago when England was at war with the Falklands, and a student from Cape Verde stood up in my class and said, the Falklands belong to Argentina, and England stole them years ago. So I'm just giving that as an example that even though our immigrants are here, and they're here because there's hope and there's promise, which is what they want, they also are seeing us and seeing the news from different perspectives. And it's really good for us to recognize that you can see things in many different ways.
Juanita, when you develop your English language, second language class, how long do you think how long does it take for a incoming immigrant to grasp the English language and all our idioms and all our famous phrases? Is that a year, 2 years, 3 years?
It's a long process, and it depends on the age. It depends on the education of the student. My sense is that if these people have a good education in their own country, they're going to assimilate quicker, including the language. But it is not something that happens quickly. As we know, we studied English for 18 years, more, and we're still learning it. I think that language acquisition should be seen more as something like fine arts, where a person has to practice to be an actor or a singer or even a soccer player. it goes on, and as I tell my students, you're never perfect, but you keep learning. So we do have charts that, for example, my director at Roxbury, I think, has a chart of how many hours it takes for an adult to become comfortable in the language, and it is something like 900 hours of instruction. So I think that one of the things we deal with all the time is that it's a long-range process. We need to get them started. We need to give them as much as we can, but we can't expect it's going to happen quickly.
Mm-hmm. How long does it? You hear that television plays a role.
It does.
And the internet plays a role.
Yes.
So does that factor in your curriculum in terms of how you try to get people to move forward with a particular aspect of the English language?
Yes, all of those things are helpful. Students I do encourage them to listen to the news in English as well as their own language. Of course, they like to hear the news from their own country, but encourage them to set aside some time every day to practice English, and that means going out shopping on your own, not relying on somebody to translate for you. A listening comprehension, again, the more you listen, the better your ear becomes. So they really need to make a commitment. One of the things we've seen, in especially K through 12, is that students will come to class and practice English and go home, and for the rest of the day, they're speaking their own language, and so they're not making the progress that we would like them to. So there are challenges on every level. Again, what we see is people who come in with a good education move along quite quickly because they're already good students. They already know how to study. Students who have limited background in education are probably going to go more slowly.
It's funny you mentioned some of the things you talked about, athletics. I believe one of the fastest way that young people learn is through athletics,
yes.
Whether it be soccer or basketball, whatever it is,
yes.
Because almost every country is immersed in that with a few exceptions.
Right.
And then the other thing is music. It's amazing how people will hear music from another culture, say, that's really good. And I mean, it's a bond.
It is.
The Olympics are a perfect example how people can come together,
Yes.
and there's no problem there. It's funny, we talk about teaching kids or teaching people how to learn that second language. I can remember going to Canada, and one of my sons was like 6 years old. We were there for, I think, 12 days. He learned more in 12 days than I learned the whole time, because he was like a sponge.
Yes.
I keep asking, what did he learn? And he wasn't prolific or anything, proficient, excuse me, but he was really good in getting the gist of it. I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
And we'd start, I think, too late in 7th or 8th grade.
Sometimes we do.
Yeah.
But I'm also convinced that you can learn it in any language. I don't believe that something happens to my brain so that I can't learn as well. Yeah. I think it's a question of staying active and just keep involved.
Exposure to it.
Yes. So I do think that our education continues our whole life. Mm-hmm. I would like Americans in general to have more interest in foreign cultures and language. Mm-hmm. Language has never been a strong part of our curriculum. Mm-hmm. And I was dismayed even a few years ago asking a colleague here, what happened to the languages and the high school, and the answer was, well, we had to cut something, so we cut languages. Well, when I'm in Europe, I taught in Switzerland for a year, and my students had many languages they were studying. It was very strong. Of course, they're surrounded by other countries, so it makes sense. But I think that we've been rather blind about learning about other cultures. One of the good things in terms of immersion is that English has become the international language, partly because of the internet, which is a good thing. So many people all over the world are being more exposed to English, which is a good thing. But I think that in turn, we need to turn outward and really appreciate that the world is a big place and that lots of things to learn everywhere.
I know one of my sons was talking about international kind of stuff and the dealings
Yeah.
that he had. And the monetary world is really based in the United States. And if they want to do business with us, they basically deferred to English. But what's happening now, over the last 15, 20 years, is that a lot of the students are going abroad, and when they get hired, if they have a language, whether it be French or Chinese or whatever it might be, they have a little bit of advantage because the world is about this big now.
Yes.
You know, and everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people. The fellow who died, Montumbo, he had 9 languages,
Yes.
basketball player. He came from Africa, and I think that some people would assume, well, he probably learned English and that was it. 9 of them.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes, it is amazing.
Yeah.
It is amazing. I think that we need to look at the international scene, I think, more than just America first kind of attitude. And we really are. People say it, but I don't know if we really internalize it. We truly are a country of immigrants. And that's where our strength has come from. People come here because they believe they can make a better life. What we see in our classes and what I observe is that they are very dedicated to making a better life for themselves. They are working, my students are working 2 jobs, most of them. They're raising a family, they're going to school, they're sending money home. And that's a piece that we don't hear every day. I really think that we need to have a deeper appreciation of all that they bring. They really are a source of education and a source of work in our workplace. And again, one of the things that I've been talking with my colleagues about at Roxbury in the last year that has just beginning to be talked about is the city of Boston and colleges like ours are interested in streamlining these students with these good educational backgrounds to get them into a better place in the workforce. We need these people in our hospitals and our schools, and we want to move them ahead as fast as possible.
Juanita, during this political season, we're unfortunately hearing some statements that would be critical of the immigrant population.
Yes.
When you talk to your students, do they express any kind of examples of discrimination or harassment or unwelcomeness among their family or their friends or themselves?
They do express concerns about discrimination, but I think that we hear more of the optimistic side, and we are trying to be as welcoming as we can. One of the things that I think is very encouraging, as you said before, even teachers at the elementary level now are required to take courses to get open the doors to this kind of understanding. And we are trying to be as welcoming as we can. So I think there is room for hope in those areas, that we are trying to train our doctors even and our people on the workforce that we can take a bigger perspective. So there are really good things happening, but there's no question that there is sort of inherent discrimination, that black people are stopped more often, as you know, by the police. I've heard my students, some years ago, we did some workshops at Massasoit with students from non-native English populations, and we coordinated with Bridgewater State and Cape Cod Community College to have our students talk and write papers. These were A students, and so it was very wonderful to hear what they wrote and what they thought. Most interesting to me was after these papers were delivered, the students from these 3 colleges were talking about how often they would go into a store and be followed because somebody thought they were going to steal something, how often they were stopped because they were black. So I think that we don't realize how much they sort of put up with on a daily basis. There is still a lot of discrimination. Again, I'm encouraged that there are some shifts and there are some really good things happening, but I think also that there is sort of sort of oblivious attitude sometimes about the differences and how that we sort of think certain ways without being challenged.
Yeah.
I think without experiencing it's hard to feel the same kinds of feelings and try to address things that we're not familiar with. One of the things that the city of Brockton has been doing is they've taken some of the students from the elementary schools, and one school happens to be the Davis School. The 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students are brought 2 times a year. In fact, they were before budget, 2 times a year to the Bridgewater campus, and they kind of like an open house and walked around, talked with people of color, talked with people of handicap. They have some handicapped people.
Yeah.
They had a wide range of people in different subjects. They brought them to the airport where they do their airplane studies and whatever the heck they have there. And then what happened is that they thought before they went that college was not even attainable. They didn't know that Bridgewater is 8 miles down the line.
Yes.
But after 6th, 7th, and 8th grade of going, it became something that they could aim for. And the other thing is the amazing how the parents, many of them were immigrants, who worked 2 jobs with no benefits. Both of them working 2 jobs. So the coverage and the child care is divided among young kids and so forth. They might be 14 years old watching the family or a grandparent or something. So there's a lot of obstacles to overcome that we don't think of. We're very blessed in that we have so many things already set up for us, you know. And just a little kind gesture goes a long way.
It does, and I think
really
making
does.
connections is really a key to, like you say, people don't know the services that are available, and as much as possible, we need to help them make those connections. So I think that's things that we can do in our community as well as in the bigger communities is get the word out as much as possible. And sometimes we need reps from these communities to sort of be the carriers of communication back to their community, because some of these communities become very isolated from the bigger communities. So, yeah.
Juanita, at your time at Roxbury Community College, how many students have you mentored and brought into the English language?
It's hard to say. When I retired, I thought I'd be working a few years after my retirement, and I'm sort of in the 10th year. So hundreds, I guess I'd say, yes.
So your normal class size would be what when you...
Right now, this semester, I have a class of 20. I started with 22 and another class of 11. Our population at Roxbury in the ESL is really growing. It's where we're seeing the growth in the college, and that's why we really want more focus on it. And I suspect if you talk to people around the state, we have 15 community colleges, and I am on some statewide groups that are advocating for more ESL, that we are seeing growth all across the state, and this is where we predict that the growth is going to continue, and it's a good time for us because, as you know, everybody predicted many times ago when we got older that there would be a drop in population, and colleges are really looking for students now. Yeah. So this is really a good time for us to promote this.
And when you said the majority of those folks that you work with are working people?
Yes.
Yes.
Just about all of them, yes. They're working as nurses' aides, they're working at McDonald's, they're working at, as I say, pretty low-paying jobs, you know. But it's interesting because we also see that as the English gets better, many of them will come to us and say they got a promotion at work, even with a little bit of English, you know, in 1 or 2 semesters. Yeah. It makes a difference. So we also have to adjust, you know, we try to offer courses at times when they're most available and so forth, and we have to look at, as we create our curriculum, we have to look at their needs and how that the college can match and so forth. And I think every college is doing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
We've got about a couple minutes before we have to break away, but I know Tom Evans has some announcements to make.
I do.
That I think are important for the Whitman Freedom Team and for Whitman in general. So, Tom?
Sure. Well, before I do, I want to thank Juanita, just in case we don't get to say thank you again.
Thank you.
Very informative, and I hope people get a lot out of it, because I know I did. Coming up in the next few weeks, I want people to think about October 24th is a Thursday, and October 24th, we are finally going to do our Unity Night, which was scheduled for September 11th, but because of Triple E, we had to move it. We couldn't do an outside event. So on Thursday, October 24th, at the Whitman Hanson Regional High School Auditorium, we will have some speakers up there, and our theme will be civility and respect in relation to conversations and dialogue. Part of it is because of the dialogue that we're having currently over the presidential election. That's part of it. But there's so many issues that are going on in the world that have gotten people to be really upset and draw sides. We have the October 7th event in Palestine. We have the current unrest in Ukraine and Egypt and the Near East and so forth. But we have it here in our own communities, and people talking about what I think Juanita so nicely put, how we can accept the people who are here for the same reasons we are, who have family, have children, love them, want to do the best, and they're not there for a free hand. And I think part of that conversation was held today, and we hope in succeeding shows and succeeding events that we have, that we can bring this topic and this conversation out to the forefront, so that people can learn that that more is better and that difference is better in many, many cases. So Thursday, October 24th, 6:30, Whitman Hanson High School.
Okay.
So
I just want to mention that for those of you who follow the Whitman Freedom Team, our programming here, we're on regular every week on this cable channel, but you also can watch us on YouTube. Just put in the Whitman Freedom Team, and you can catch it on YouTube as well. Before we break away, I want to thank Rob and the whole crew for helping us out today. And as Tom mentioned, Juanita, thank you for your expertise and continued good work for Massachusetts and the immigrant community. And Tom, and this is Mike Kryzanek saying thanks for watching, and remember that date that Tom mentioned, the 24th of October in the
Whitman Hanson Regional High School's Auditorium or Performing Arts Center.
Okay. And it's an important evening that I think will help to further bring our community together and respond in a civil way to those people who are either new or who are experiencing some kind of challenge in their life, whatever it might be. And that's the purpose of the Whitman Freedom Team, and of course the work that Tom has been doing. So Mike Kryzanek for Tom and Juanita, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next month.
Peace.